Welcome to Flipping Houses for Rookies, the only podcast that shows you how to take back your financial freedom and live the American dream by becoming a real estate investor. Without the banks, without the big wigs, and without the realtor's nonsense. This isn't about selling you coaching or some get-rich-quick scheme. It's about opening your eyes to the possibilities so you can make real chunks of dough, buy your life back, and become a free American. With over 400 episodes aired, we're delivering everything you need to know to find deals, talk to sellers, structure deals, and win big. It's time to take action, change your mindset, and claim what's yours. Real estate is the key to your freedom, and we're here to show you the way. Subscribe now and catch our latest episodes on YouTube at Flipping Houses for Rookies, because your financial freedom starts today. Now, here are your hosts, Bill and Pete.
All right, here we are at another episode of Flipping Houses for Rookies. So here's my question, Peter, that you don't know yet.
No, I never do. Jeez,
you don't know this yet.
Always on the spot. Go ahead.
I want to know if our listeners liked our new intro. We have a new intro and a new exit, which is quite different. So I hope they liked it. We stepped it up a bit. I'll have you know that is in preparation of going over to the new private platform. We're going to have all kinds of new stuff over there when we head on over there. But for right now, we are going to do podcast number 429. Excuse me. The name of today's podcast is Creative Real Estate versus the Realtor System. This is for you, Peter.
Oh, okay. It sounds very, very familiar, like we might have said something about that. But today is a whole new day. Yeah, a lot of stuff changing. Go ahead, Mr. Hawthorne.
Here is the description. Are you sick and tired of spinning your wheels in the so-called realtor system and decided to search out another way to do deals without large sums of money, good credit, and no license? Then found this thing called creative real estate, but now struggle with what is the difference between the two methods? Or why a realtor wouldn't touch some of these creative deals with a 10-foot pole? Maybe you talked to a seller and they asked you how creative real estate transactions are different from the realtor system and why they should do it. Well, don't throw the towel in just yet, because today we are going to reveal some simple, common sense real estate issues that most don't think about. Never mind actually implement them correctly to make gargantuan deals at ease. In today's real estate, the rules of the game have changed. Yep, they have changed. Mm-hmm. And today we will clarify how and why. Then the most important thing, Peter, is we're going to ask you if you're ready to join the new real estate revolution. So be ready.
Well, that's me, Mr. Revolution. I'm always on the cutting edge of some crazy stuff. And usually at the end, it was fine.
Yeah.
He's not so crazy after all. Anyways.
All right, let's do some housekeeping type activities. So first of all, thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting us. Thank you for listening to us. Make sure you subscribe to us, wherever it is that you're watching us or listening to us. We really appreciate that. Make sure you leave us some feedback. Also, we live stream this podcast when we record it every single Thursday morning, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And you can find us on YouTube in two locations at Flipping Houses for Rookies or Creative REI Replay. We own both of them. And the other place you can find us is on LinkedIn and Facebook. Okay, so if you want to watch us live, head on over there, 9:30 Thursday morning. And if you have questions, just type them in to wherever you can type in that platform, and I will get them while we're doing the podcast. Please only ask questions about the podcast because we have a heavy agenda. We try to keep to a time schedule. If you have any other questions that don't pertain to the podcast, then head over to either flippinghousesforrookies.com or creative real estate, creative reply.com and put in a support ticket there. Okay?
Yes,
Yay.
Three.
All right.
Done.
All right.
Next.
All right, Pete. I've made some bold statements now in the podcast description. So let's start with this. What exactly is a real estate revolution? Well, a good definition or explanation would be this: a dramatic and wide-reaching change in the way something works or is organized in people's ideas or mind.
That sounds right.
So our definition, or my definition of a revolution, is a dramatic and wide-reaching change in the way something works or is organized in people's ideas or minds. So just to kind of give you some reality on that, I want you to know that this is important to understand, because if you've had children or been around children and live with someone like a spouse or a parent or a whatever, a companion, right? Here's what happens when you're with them every single day. Do you notice the changes?
No, very, very subtle.
But if you're like I am right now, I have 3 grandchildren, and I went to Florida for a month, so I will not see my grandchildren for probably 5 weeks, maybe 6, usually 5 weeks, right? So I'll see a difference when I go back, right?
More than the parents will.
That's right. So what I'm trying to say is we've been talking about this revolution for some time now, many podcasts, probably, well, many podcasts. We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
It's been a complete year since the National Association of Realtors have been sued.
That's right.
So things have happened that we don't know about, and things are happening ground level that we don't hear about, and it's kind of interesting. But real estate has changed for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. I see a lot of posts about buyer agents and what to do and the new rules, and read this, download that a lot. Yeah. I never used to see that before.
Right. All right. So revolution is, the definition is a dramatic and wide-reaching change in the way something works or is organized in people's ideas or minds. Now, here's something extremely interesting about the word revolution. Okay. And then we'll move on. The origin of the word comes from a Latin word, which is revolvere, or roll back.
Revolve. It's around, like turn
revolve
around.
Air, yeah. So or in English terms, revolve back, which I think is extremely apropos to our podcast today, because real estate's been around for thousands of years. The realtor hasn't.
That's right.
The realtor's been around for 100, maybe organized for 75. So I take this whole podcast as we're rolling back to the old days when the realtor wasn't here. How did we do real estate before them? Right.
That's right.
So even though, so just to elaborate that on that a little bit. So I've stated this many times, right? Before the National Association of Realtors, which is NAR, was organized in 1949. Even though realtors were around before then, they were charlatans or considered snake oil salespeople, right? And it was only because what would happen is a realtor would take a deposit on a property thinking they had a deal that was slam dunk, and they would spend the deposit for their bills or whatever, and then the deal wouldn't go through and they wouldn't have the money. That's not the only reason. That's my own speculation, but I believe that's what happened, because I remember when I was a kid that happening, right? Which is how NAR evolved, right? They wrote a code of ethics. Then a few months later, started the National Association of Realtors to monitor or police the code of ethics. That's what they were formed for, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like I just said a minute ago, so the question I pose again is, how did we transact real estate before realtors came aboard, right? What was that process of selling properties, right?
Sure.
So, just with that concept, let's start there. Okay. Let's start at that exact point, right? The first myth is that realtors change the fact that you can sell a property with a realtor and get all cash in about 30 days instead of some money down and monthly payments, right? Or the other way was you could be a tycoon with lots of cash, the wild, wild west, right? The bad guy, the villain, the black hat, whatever you want to call it, because that's usually what they were, which is where all the I guess you could say like the time track, coming up through time, is how we end up with this connotation or idea that people with money are bad, right? Because it probably stems from this. I don't know that to be 100% true, but the tycoon with all the cash, and he bullies sales prices because he's got cash and he's the tycoon, right?
Yeah.
Which means now the realtor ends up getting the tycoons, which are now called banks, right, on their side by lending the money to buyers and making the payments to the tycoon instead of the seller, right? So just so I don't spend the whole podcast talking, why don't you just kind of reiterate what I just said so they can hear it in different words, because this is vital to what's going to happen.
Well, before the realtors, people just do things together, on their own. Somehow they would just get together and they would just do whatever they thought they could do for the deal. What can you do? How much can you give me? When can you pay me? How? And now people think there's laws like you have to do this and you have to do that. You have to get a realtor, but it's still a free country. If I want to sell you my car or my house or a piece of paper, we can do that. And to me, it's a matter of keeping more of the deal amongst ourselves instead of cutting in all these other people to take slices out of it.
Good. So basically what happened is I had a ranch in East Kentucky, I don't know, somewhere, and I decided I want to sell it. So either I sold it to a tycoon for a very discounted price, or the railroad was coming through. We've heard too many of those stories, and the tycoon's trying to buy up all the property for 2 cents on a dollar, and they bully you. Right?
And that's after they rustled the cattle and burned the barn.
Right. So, and that didn't happen all the time, but it did happen, right?
Yeah.
So you come along and you say, I want to buy your farm. And I say, okay, how much do you have down? Well, I can give you, I can give you a wagon, and I can give you, I have a, whatever I have for some possessions, and maybe a few $100s.
Yeah.
And then I would make you payments, right? Now those payments in the beginning were bartered a lot of times. Like, I give you 3 dozen eggs a week, and, a cow, whatever, some cattle, whatever, or money, right?
Yep.
And that's how they would pay off the property. So then what happens is the realtor comes on board and says, we don't have to do that because we have these bankers that will lend the buyer money and give you all cash.
Yep.
And that's how the realtor got on board, is because they partnered or affiliated with these bankers. And of course, the bankers loved it because, as we talk about all the time, if you borrow $100,000 to buy a property and paid them for 30 years, you're more than likely going to pay them $250,000 to $300,000 for that property because of the interest.
That's right.
Right. We used to do that at seminars, right?
Yeah.
Somebody tell me how much they paid for the house. I paid $180,000 for your house. Okay. And I'd say to them, you pay cash? No, I got a mortgage. Okay. How much is your payment? And then we would do the math and we would find out how much they really paid, because it's how much they paid each month times, the principal and the interest times the amount of months, which, by the way, is on your mortgage document. They show it to you, but they slip it right by you, and you don't pay that much attention because what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. You're just trying to get through the month, whatever the
Right.
payment is. But when you look at it all dragged out like that, that's a lot. And you think you have no choice.
Right. So this is the reason why I'm elaborating this, because this is a very important concept that catapults us into the differentiation on creative real estate and the realtor.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So not every seller needs all cash to solve their problems. That's the first thing you need to understand. And when you start talking to enough sellers, you will realize that.
Yep.
Right. So that's a very important thing. Now, I'm not saying that that's what you're looking for. I'm not saying that's what you should target. I'm not saying that's what your market should be. I'm just saying that to kind of break that solid ridge in your head of like, you have to have all cash to do real estate, right? You don't, because some people don't even care about the cash. Some people just want to walk away from the house and get relief from it.
Sure.
Right? All right. So before we make a list of differences between the two, you have to wrap your mind around this single concept. Okay. And this is not known. This is not known. Not known. You would think that this is the simplest thing in the world. And you would think, well, as soon as I say it, you're going to like, well, of course, Bill. But it is not known. I think I put in a podcast a couple podcasts ago. So one of my latest, because I write a lot of copy, right? So one of my latest things is okay, so would you agree that if 98% of America doesn't know something, then it's a secret? It's obvious, right? And this is that. And you're going to tell me I'm hyping it, but I'm not, because I'm going to explain it, right?
Okay.
All the realtor is paid to do is to find you a buyer, to find the seller a buyer. That's a fact. I went through realtor school. I did not get my license, but I did go through realtor school. And all they taught you was how to fill out the purchase and sales contract and all the laws of holding the deposit money so that you can't get sued, and all the laws of what you can and can't say. They did not teach negotiating. They did not teach how the closing process works. They did not teach how you need to file. They didn't even tell you, okay, so when you sign a listing agreement, which is what they use to lock up a property, you should go to the town hall and you should check and make sure whoever you signed the listing agreement with is actually on the deed. They didn't teach that.
That's the second question we ask people when we get on the phone.
Right.
Whose name's on the deed?
And that's the reason why, because I went to realtor school and I realized it was such an out point. Now, I want to be very clear here. Anybody that knows me knows that I bash realtors. It has nothing to do with realtors. It has nothing to do with agents or brokers or nothing. It's the realtor system. I will bash NAR. NAR is a ugly, dirty, scummy organization. They charge a lot of fees and they make too many. They are the second or third. I tried to find this the other day and I didn't spend enough time on it. They are the second or third largest lobbyist in Congress to keep their rules alive.
Yeah, boy.
Okay, if you have an ethical system, you don't need to be lobbying in Congress. Okay,
that's right.
So you can say whatever you want. The system worked for 75 years. The system is good. The system is a monopoly. What's the definition of a monopoly? They're the only game in town. So when you're selling a house, you have two choices. You could go to the realtor or sell it on your own. Okay. The only reason why 88.7% of the people that sell it on their own go to a realtor is, number one, they're annoyed with the amount of jerk buyers that call that are not qualified. And they don't, and I don't mean that derogatorily. It's just that they think they're going to buy a house for $1,200 a month and, $5,000 down. Everybody thinks that, right?
Yeah.
So the point that I'm making is that they go to a realtor because really, after I've put my bad humor in there, really the reason why a for sale by owner goes to a realtor is because A, they don't know how to pre-qualify the buyer, And because they don't know how to pre-qualify the buyer, they get into deals and jams that they shouldn't get in. They write contracts they shouldn't write because they're dealing with somebody that can't close, and they don't know how to do that. So the realtors are good at that, because the realtor's job is to not only get a buyer, but make sure they have a high potential of getting closed. Because if they didn't have that high potential of getting closed, then the realtor wouldn't get the commission.
Sure. And they have experience, if nothing else, even if they're not trained, you do something a few times, you start learning. The home buyer is just one shot, so he doesn't have enough history to know what he should or shouldn't look for. So it's a benefit that way.
All right. So now, on a side note, the good realtors, and I'm talking about a realtor that does more than, 6 or 8 deals or 10 or 12 deals a year. I'm talking about realtors because I think one of the best realtors I used did 71 deals the last year I was with her. Okay. And it was her and 2 assistants. One was her husband, and I think one was a dear friend of the family or something like that. But they all had she orchestrated it. She was the captain of the ship, and she could sail that ship through fog, through storms, she knew what she was doing. Yeah. But the reason why is because these realtors that figure out that they want to play consultants and handhold sellers and buyers through the deal will get more closing commissions. But they're not taught that from the Realtor Association. So not many will rise above the norm or the herd and do this. So they're far and few between. So one of the things that we used to teach, but we don't anymore, is if you're going to hire a realtor, the first question you should ask is, how many houses have you closed on in the last 12 months?
Right.
Because then you know that, the way I hire a realtor, because I do hire them, the way I hire a realtor is their negotiating skills. Like, I have a guy that worked for me as an acquisition manager, and I taught him how to negotiate, or he was already good, but I helped him with his skills, and he worked for me for a while, and then he went realtor. And so I still use him to this day, because I know I can say to him, go back and tell them that it's red, white, and blue. And I know he's going to go back and say it's red, white, and blue.
Right.
Because I can't speak to the buyer or the seller myself. So I want to make sure that my message is carried correctly. Right. All right. So because of this concept that all they're doing is finding you a buyer, this puts us into the playing field, because these days, with the technology that we have, we can find buyers better and faster than most realtors. Because the realtors will use the MLS, and then behind the MLS, which is the multiple listing service, they have a bunch of tools, which, by the way, in the NAR lawsuit, the National Association of Realtor, they were sued for racketeering, and there's another lawsuit that's supposed to be coming out about this. And one of the reasons why is because they owned a company called Value.com, and Value.com owned shares in Zillow. They own Realtor.com, Trulia, Redfin, all these big websites that we use for comps. They were influencing the prices of houses to keep the numbers higher, so the realtor could, because they get paid on a higher number. They're 5% of the sale price. So obviously, it's better to have a house worth $300,000 instead of $200,000, because you get more commission. So they've actually been sued in court for this. So this is not a bill thing where I'm like, this is some conspiracy theory or something like that. Just go online and you'll find it yourself, right?
Well, it sounds like a conspiracy, but it's on their end.
Right.
They have shares in all Zillow, the Redfin, the Realtor, Trulia. Right. That's what you see. It's all their numbers. Yuck.
So with that concept, all they're really doing is finding a buyer, and then the good ones assist them through the sale to make sure it happens, right? So we just need to know how to explain to the seller how this works and why to convince them that we could do our job better. Because there's nothing the realtor can do that we can't do and do better. And here's the reason why. Because we're going to use an option agreement. And an option agreement means that you have the right to buy, but not the obligation. But it locks up the property. And what happens is by virtue of actually signing an option agreement with the seller, you end up as part owner of the property. You have an equity share. The law in the United States law says that you have to have legal consideration. Legal consideration is paper money, right? Paper money is bills. You can't use coins. It has to be paper money. So that means that you can use a denomination as low as $1 and as high as $100. Now, I would imagine there's other bills that are higher than 100, but we don't use them commonly. So anywhere in that ballpark, you should give as a consideration deposit, which is non-refundable. Now, we use 100 because it's more professional. So for us, the only thing that we're risking is $100, because if the deal doesn't go through, we lose 100. That's not the reason why we're doing this, because what happens is that $100 actually consummates or puts in stone that we are now part owner of this property. We have an equity share in this property. So because we're legally, by United States law, part owner of this property, because we just gave them $100, right? So technically we're only $100 equity share, right? Technically, you can say that, right? The law doesn't say how much equity share. You could be $1,
right?
And you could still be an equity share, and you don't need to have a license.
Well, you're selling your own, quote, your own property.
At
You
that
have a
point.
license to sell something that you own, and you're part owner. That's enough.
Which, by the way, if there's any realtor listening to me and they're looking to get away from the National Association of Realtors, this is how you do it. Just go to creativereireply.com and get a demo. You can book a demo call with me or one of my partners, and I will show you how you could be non-licensed, still use all your knowledge as a realtor, and make a lot more money than you did as a realtor, because we give you leads and everything, right?
Yep.
All right, so let's go through my list, okay, that I have on why we do this way better and what you would tell a seller. What's the difference between us and a realtor? So first of all, am I clear about the two concepts?
I think so. Sure.
Okay. So one, we can bring all cash to the closing within 30 days by using this option agreement that I just told you about for the same 5% cost to the seller, right? The difference is we tell the seller how much they're going to get up front before writing the document, and the realtor does not do that. So you got a $400,000 piece of property. The realtor comes in, says, I want to sign a listing contract, and that's all they tell you. The seller has no clue how much money they're going to get. Us, we're obligating to the seller that if they give us a 5% discount, we're going to give them $380,000. Now, it's not guaranteed, but it's pretty well set that that's what they're going to get. Now, unless the market doesn't allow the 380, they're not. I mean, it might be worth 360 and they're asking 380, and you don't know that. But the most important thing is that if we sign an option agreement for 380, then what we need to do, this is my suggestion, is just add $5,000 for our time on there and sell the property for $385,000. It's a $400,000 piece of property. You will get activity because it's $15,000 cheaper than market, and you might even get in some economies you might even get a bidding war.
Sure.
Right. So the 5% that we're getting, it's not all going in our pocket, and that's an important thing to realize. Now, you could ask $400,000 if you think the market will bear that, and you can make the $20,000 if you want. But here's the thing: with a realtor, they make 5%. We'll say $20,000, right?
Sure.
You with me?
Oh yeah.
Am I going too fast?
No, it's good.
So at $20,000 at the closing, $20,000 is removed from the closing for realtor cost. So now what's going to happen is you're going to have a buyer and a seller realtor, most cases,
right?
95% of the time. So that means the seller agent gets $10,000, the buyer's agent gets $10,000.
Right.
Right. Now watch this. Once it goes into the brokerage firm of the seller or the buyer, usually, and there's different splits nowadays, so it may be different. for some people. But the old-fashioned way, or the way that it's been done for very many times, is now the seller's realtor splits that again. So the broker gets half and the realtor gets half. So that means the realtor made $2,500.
Mm.
The seller realtor made $2,500. The buyer realtor made $2,500.
Wait, wasn't it 10,000 split in half on each side?
Oh, so it's 5,000. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he made $5,000.
Yeah. It's a lot less than like, oh, they're getting 20,000. Who's they?
Yeah,
It's
you're right. I did my
it's not
math
just one guy.
Yeah, I did my math wrong. Sorry.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah, so that means the realtor did the job and made $5,000.
Okay.
So if we had a $400,000 house and we made $5,000, what's wrong with that?
We're doing as well as one of those because we're doing it instead of splitting it 4 ways. It's just in our pocket.
Right. So it's the same amount of money. This is why I tell you the realtors should listen to what I'm saying, because this is the new way to do real estate as a realtor, is to do it the old-fashioned way, the rollback. That's what I was talking about. Right?
Yeah.
So does that make sense?
It does.
All right, good. Number 2, realtors usually only work with properties in good condition.
Oh yeah.
Right. And if they do ugly houses, right, they always end up discounting it as much as creative real estate investors do, because guess who's going to buy it? Right.
Another investor.
Right. So
the end users don't like it if it's not like on TV, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So creative investors are the buyer often for those properties, and the realtor is going to have to look for a buyer. Okay. So let's clear away all the fog, and let's look at this for what it's worth. Okay. The realtor is going to make their decisions on how to sell this property based on what the bank will lend on. Yeah. So the realtor's not working for the buyer or the seller. The realtor's actually working for the banker, because 98% of all deals are going to come from a loan. So if a banker looks at an ugly house that's not insurable, meaning you can't live in it, they're not going to lend on it.
Sure.
So it has nothing to do with retail, like the person living in the house, or wholesale, the person that's going to fix it up. When you clear away all the fog, it has to do with who will lend on this house.
Right.
Or who will write a check for it. So just like I always say, right, if you buy my computer today for $1,000 and give me $1,000 worth of cash, you paid $1,000. No trick there, right? But if you bought my computer today for $1,000, right, and you swiped your credit card and paid for it over 24 months, you paid more than $1,000. So this is the thing called time versus cash, time versus money, right? So if you're going to put up the cash now, you expect a discount. We're going to talk about more of this later on. But my point is that, so the realtor only works with properties that are in good condition for that reason, because their commission's coming from the bank most of the time. Not every deal, right? But there's not enough deals that are not bank funded for all these realtors. So it's the majority, not the minority.
Sure.
Right? So the realtor is going to look at properties that are bank qualified. Realtors are going to, now they might do the other properties, but they're going to be a by the way and left over here like a redheaded stepchild.
Sure. Unless the realtor has a few wholesalers on the side, but I don't think we see that very often. And all this is under the purview of, will it close? The bank says no, that's it, not going to close. So they have to consider that.
So when you're talking to a seller and they're telling you it needs $50,000 worth of repairs, right? And they say they're going to go to a realtor, well, let them go to a realtor, because they're going to get the same numbers you're giving them. Right? And I'm going to talk about this later. Well, I'll just talk about it later. But basically it's, like when you're talking to the seller, it's like, I don't understand why you're going to go to a realtor. They're going to go look for a buyer and I'm the buyer. Why don't you just talk to me? You don't like my offer, tell me why. Let's adjust it.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Number 3. Does that make sense, by the way?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So number 3, realtors do the whole open house drill.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Now, when a creative real estate entrepreneur buys, someone like me, now I'm talking about buying the property from them. We're going to talk about other ways in a few minutes. But if I'm buying the property and I'm either going to keep it, to be honest with you, I'm at a point where I'm a pain in the ass, and I know it for those around me because I'm buying properties for my portfolio. I really don't want to buy and flip properties. I mean, we're trying to do some slot deals right now just to get you some cash, and I need cash too, but you always need cash, right? But the point is that I want portfolio property, right? So when I'm buying a house, all they need to do is have me walk through the house. That's it. With a realtor, they got to constantly keep the house clean. They have to constantly keep the house showable, just in case the realtor is going to call today and say, hey, I got somebody out front wants to get in the house. Because they saw the sign and they're parked out front, and people are definitely more impatient these days than ever before.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So that's a big issue. I'm going to tell you another one that I didn't write down here that falls into this category. And you know this because you've seen the responses from people in houses.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Here you go. You ready?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Mr. Seller, I see you got a lot of stuff here, and you've been living here for 40 years. I'll tell you what, you're 70 years old or 80 years old or 60 years old or whatever, right? Your wife is sick, whatever, whatever the situation is. How about if you just take what you want when you leave and I'll get rid of the rest of the stuff for you?
Yeah.
They're like, really? I'm like, yeah, you don't have to leave the house broom swept like with a realtor.
That's right.
You just take what you want and you leave everything else behind. Now, there is a caveat to this. The day you leave, you can't come back the next day and say, I forgot something. Because I'm going to send my crew in here and they're going to put everything probably in a dumpster or it's going to be gone. So don't come back to me 2 or 3 days later and say you forgot something. So I'm going to make sure you have everything you need and everything you want out of the house, because if you don't, it's gone. Yep. I'm going to tell you, for a lot of people, that is freaking huge.
Yeah, we've seen it. We've done it.
On the same note, sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
No, we've done it, man. We've done it a number of times.
I got it.
Yeah.
So on the same note of negotiating, this is something that it blows my mind away. It absolutely blows my mind away why a realtor wouldn't do this. We've offered to just pay to have them move. So just hire a moving truck for $2,000, $1,500, $2,500. Make it part of the deal.
Yep.
And say, we'll send a mover in and get you out of here. You don't have to do any moving. All you do is just tell the mover what to do, and they'll come in and pack everything up for you, put it in a truck, and bring it to your new place.
Mm-hmm.
Why a realtor wouldn't do that is beyond me. Well, I do know why, because they want more commission, right?
Yeah.
All right, here's a huge one. Number 4, right? If the seller has no equity, the realtor will require the seller to come out of pocket with dough at the closing.
Right.
Now, let me ask you this, Peter.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of moving quick here because I have a lot to cover, right? So
sure.
I know I'm doing a lot of talking today, but I want to get through all this because I get this question all the time. What's the difference between creative real estate and realtors? And hopefully I'm answering that question.
That's good.
We just came through COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what happened in COVID, or right after COVID, post-COVID. House is worth $180,000. They put it on the market and they get offers for $225,000.
That's right.
Okay. So I ask you, have you heard of that? And if you haven't heard of that, then you've been kind of had your head in the sand. Right? because everybody's heard this story. It is a normal thing.
I think so.
Okay, now it's a couple of years later, and that person gets a job transfer, or spouse dies, or they lose a job, or whatever. Do you think that person is going to have equity?
I hope so, but they may not.
It's a $180,000 house.
Oh, yeah.
They paid $225,000.
Oh, that guy. Oh, no. If they right after that, like a year or two in, no.
Yeah.
No, it's tight. When you overpay for something like that, and the market can change, or it doesn't.
So probably what happened is the appraiser pushed the appraisal to 200 or 205, and the seller got $20,000 from the buyer, because the buyer had to put down more money to make it happen.
Right.
So they had to put down payment money, closing costs, plus the additional $20,000 that wasn't financed.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So when I say this is a huge one, number 4 is a huge one. If the seller has no equity, then the realtor will require them to sell and bring money to the table, because it may not sell for $225,000 right now. Maybe it's back at the 180 or 190.
Yeah.
Even if it's at the 200, even if they sell for what they owe on it, they had 10 to 12 to 15% with their closing cost.
That's right.
With the realtor, it's going to be 15%.
Mm-hmm.
Creative real estate entrepreneurs will do deals like this and return require the seller to just give us terms, and we can clean it up for them. So they can get rid of the house,
mm-hmm.
they can sell the house, and not have to come out of pocket for the money. Now, time heals everything, right?
Yeah.
If you cut your finger, what do you need? Time.
Band-aid and time.
Yeah, because your body will heal the finger, right? Yeah. If you have a major breakup, what do you need? Time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you're broke, what do you need? Time to make more money, right? Yeah. So time heals everything. So if you get somebody in a property like this, what you need to realize is if they're in that position, then you as the entrepreneur need to be clever enough to know to ask for more time. You could do a slot deal, a sandwich reception transfer. But if it's a tough deal, like they owe too much money, then what you need to do is get more time. Don't do a 3-year lease option, do a 7-year. So the time could fix it. They can pay down the principal balance, and you can offer your buyer who is not qualified for a bank loan more time. These people that buy properties that don't have bank qualifications love time. You tell one of those people you give me 10% down, 5% now, and for 2 years pay your down payment assistance program, but I'm going to give you a 10-year lease. To them, that's like their whole life. And that will make the deal because you're giving them 10 years. Right? So this is something that you could tell someone that is in this position. They sell with a realtor, they got to come out of pocket with money. We don't have to do that, right?
Right. And in that case, it doesn't matter how long it takes, because it winds up being zero expense to them. What difference does it make?
It goes from how much money can I make to how much money could I keep from losing.
Yes.
Right. All right. Yeah. Number 5, with a realtor in 2024, the percentage of buyers backing out of deals runs. You ready for this?
Say it again. When?
Yeah. So are you having trouble hearing me, or am I talking too fast, or what's happening?
No, I just thought of something else briefly when you started talking. So just hit it again for me.
Okay. So number 5, with a realtor in 2024, the percentages of buyers backing out of deals runs. Are you ready for this? 15.6% to 30.2%. Right? The difference between the numbers is the selling price. So full market deals or above are the 30.2%. Really? Average deals are 15.6%. As a creative real estate entrepreneur, there is no fall off unless the seller's lying. If the seller's lying and we go do our due diligence and we find out things that the seller didn't tell us, like They told us it was worth 300, and we go do our comps, and it's worth 250.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You don't worry about that at the beginning. You worry about that in your due diligence stage after you get them committed and signing documents, right?
Yeah.
Because we don't do our due diligence until after they commit to either a memorandum, a lease option memorandum, or just signing an option. Because then we know they're fully committed and we can go do our work. If they don't sign one of those, we don't do our due diligence. Why waste our time?
Also, to me, instead of arguing with them in the beginning of what the price is going to be, you just go along with them and put on the market, and then the market says this or that.
And that's what a realtor does, right?
Exactly. And there's no arguing like, well, it's not white. What do you mean it's not worth that? I had 15 people came and they all said no.
Right.
I mean, the market is the market. It's not up to us, the buyer or the seller. It's the buyer. That's the guy with the money.
Right.
So it's fine that way.
So the seller can avoid the drop off. Okay. Number 6, which leads us to a big factor for sellers. With the realtor system, the seller struggles with the uncertainty of when it will sell. Plus how and when they can move on. See, what's happening with this seller is most people do not see it this way. Somebody is not selling a house. Somebody's not buying a house. That is not happening in the transaction. That is the symptom of the disease.
Oh.
What's really happening, and in fact, I just had this conversation with my youngest daughter because I have a 3-house deal going right now. My oldest daughter is trying to buy a family house subject to. Her sister's trying to buy her house subject to. And then I'm going to sell her condo on seller financing. And I'm doing this whole deal at once, right? So here's the conversation I have with my youngest daughter, who is 30. They're making lifestyle changes. So when somebody's selling a house, it's a lifestyle change for whatever reason. Like they just got divorced and they got to change their life, or they got a job transfer. It's a lifestyle change. They have liens on the property and they don't want them anymore. They want a lifestyle change. So buying and selling real estate is lifestyle changing decisions.
Makes sense.
Depending on what that lifestyle is they're trying to change, and depending on how bad they want the new lifestyle, is in your advantage or not to your advantage, right? So they've made up their mind on this new lifestyle. So with a realtor, it's a big fat maybe, like maybe I can get this lifestyle, maybe I can't. Let's see what happens. And then months roll along, and either the person loses interest in that new lifestyle and thinks to themselves, oh, I'm not going to be able to get that. Or they get fed up because they really want it bad and the realtor's not performing. Right? So with a creative real estate entrepreneur, this does not happen, because if you're going to buy the property, we're going to buy the property as is and on the date of their choice. So that lifestyle decision now becomes a reality, and the two of you work on that lifestyle change together, and they become your biggest fan and they become your biggest ally, and they get the most out of the deal because they want that lifestyle change. Very important. Number 7, how about those sellers making payments on vacant houses?
Oh yeah.
With a realtor, they have to keep making those payments, plus all the utilities, taxes, maintenance, etc., and that adds up.
Yeah.
Right? With the creative real estate entrepreneur, the bleeding stops at a specific date because the entrepreneur will take over the property and he or she will take up those payments, and the bleeding stops for the seller. That's common sense, right? Yep. Number 8, which means we can close usually in 7 days if we choose to. Now, the only way that this would change is if you don't have private money in there and you need to actually bring cash to the table. But a lot of our deals, we don't bring cash to the table. A lot of them are seller finance, lease options, agreement for deeds, wraparound mortgages, all these kinds of things that we talk about, and that could be done within a week. Okay, so we go from, October 1st is we talk to the seller, and by, October 7th, we're closed. We could do that. It's a pain in the ass to move that quick, but the expectation when you move that quick is you're making a big fat deal.
Sure.
Number 9. How about loans that have prepayment penalties? Yeah, we don't think about that too much, right? I run into these often. With a realtor that has all cash, right, forces the seller to pay those pre-penalty fees.
Oh, yeah.
Where we could buy the property, a creative real estate and entrepreneur can save the seller sometimes thousands, tens of thousands of dollars by selling the property to us and holding it long enough to get through the pre-penalty process and then get money later.
Is that mostly in the early years of a mortgage? I don't know much about that.
Yeah. So what happened is, I don't want to go into this now because we're running out of time. But what happened is when interest rates go low. So realize that the definition of points. So points are interest without time.
Yeah.
Interest is time. So if I borrow $100,000 from someone, they need to give me 30 days to use the $100,000 before they can charge me interest, which is why the mortgages are always behind.
Right.
Because they have to allow me to use that money before they can charge me the interest.
Sure.
Points are a different name. They can charge me 3 points, which is 3%, and they don't need time.
Yeah, that's the upfront fee for doing the deal.
Right. So some people, like I'm refinancing a property right now, and they ask me, what do you want to do? And it cost me $5,500 to buy down points. Now, why would I pay $5,500 to not have points? Because if I have a 30-year mortgage and I amortize it over 30 years, it's a lot more than $5,500. So it's a $190,000 loan. I'm getting $185,000, but my note's going to say $190,000.
I got it.
Right. So what I'm telling you that for is because a lot of times they will feel like the bank for short-term loans, like for like flipping loans and stuff like that, they'll have prepayment penalties if they feel like they're not making enough money off of the interest and the points. They'll put a prepayment penalty in there to make what they feel like they need for a return.
Right. That makes sense.
So they want to run the loan out for 3 years or 4 years or 5 years so they can make their interest and have their rate of return, because a bank predicates how they lend money and the terms of the loan based on what they consider risk is.
Sure.
So the higher, like in this particular case, this refinance that I'm doing, which is I've canceled it twice. Right. I have to go out. I have somebody going out tomorrow to put a piece of trim under a window so they can approve the loan, which is bullshit. Right. But my point is, what I keep saying to them is, look, you appraised the house for $430. I'm borrowing $190. What is the problem? I would think you would want to throw the money at me and pray to God, drop to your knees, pray to God that I never pay. Because you're going to get a $430,000 house that is livable. There's a tenant in there paying $2,300 a month for $190,000. I would want to do that. Yeah. Anyways, so the last one, number 10, in the realtor system, the seller has to count on the buyer's loan or approval getting all the way through the closing.
Right.
Too many times I have bought houses because I do follow-up. Follow-up, I'm going to tell you right now, if you're not doing follow-up, especially nowadays, right now, the trick to real estate is follow-up. Follow-up, follow-up, follow-up. You are not buying real estate right now on a one phone call. And I'm telling you right now that my survey that is very loose is, you ready for this?
Yeah.
7 to 9 contacts before you buy a house.
Oh my God.
Wow. Some of them you could do 5 or 6, but 7 to 9 contacts. And I'm actually going to change my entire system when I get back on the follow-up, because I don't think we're doing enough follow-up. So anyways, you're not buying a house unless you have follow-up. But here's my point. Seller tells you they have a deal. 3 weeks later, 5 weeks later, they call you and say, can we still do the deal? What do you mean? What happened to your deal? Well, 3 days before the loan, before the closing, they checked on the buyer and they lost their job. Or the guy's wife went and bought a new car and now their debt to income ratio is off. Here's the number one thing I hear lately. You ready for this?
Yeah.
This is important to listen to me because I'm telling you, this is real shit. The interest rates went from 5.6% to 6.5%, and now the loan payment whacked their debt to income ratio out and they can't get the loan. That happened a lot in the last year.
Yeah.
Okay. So
yeah.
Buyers have to qualify and sellers are worried about it. So now let's take the average scenario. Like, for example, this deal I'm doing with my daughter. My daughter, Jessie, wanted to sell her house to buy this new house.
Mm-hmm.
And I told her, no, can't do that. What do you mean? Well, because first of all, we're buying this house, $500,000 house for $380,000. It's $150,000 below market value.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You can't wait. You can't get that house on slow motion. Can't happen. It just can't happen. There's too much equity there and too many greedy people will come around.
Yeah.
Can't do it. Just it's risky.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why we're doing subject to. So we do subject to. We get in the house immediately. It's got some past payments, $15,000 in past payments. We catch the mortgage up. Now we can go refinance it anytime we want because we locked the house up. Right. So my point is that I don't want her to go sell her house because I don't want to get 30 days down the road and have a deal blow up for her buyer, right?
Sure.
Yeah, so I don't know if I can. Righteous Media Group says, "What if the seller is $50,000 or $60,000 in the arrears and would like to walk away from the property for $8,000 to $16,000 in seller financing?" I'm not even sure what that means.
Like he wants $8,000 or $16,000.
If somebody's $55,000 or $60,000 behind, they're not getting any money because they're going to lose the house. I can't answer that question. If you want to send a support ticket in, I will gladly help you. The reason why is because I need to know how much the house is worth and how much the house is owed. I'm going to use total numbers. So we need to figure out how much is owed on the original mortgage, how much is owed in the arrears, and how much the seller wants, and then bounce that up against what the house is worth. Does it need repairs? There's a lot of questions there. So the question,
all the numbers.
The answer would be, if the numbers made sense, I would do the deal. It wouldn't bother me that they're $55,000 or $60,000 behind. But I will say this: if somebody's $55,000 or $60,000 behind, I'm going to tell you there's a problem with that bank note because the bank hasn't foreclosed yet. So there's something wrong with the bank note, and the bank can't foreclose. And I would go down that avenue before I did anything else. How can I contact you? I may have a deal. You can go to flippinghousesforrookies.com. or you can go to creativereireply.com and put in a support ticket. And either way, you'll reach me. Okay, so that's 10 ways, Peter. I'm going to go a little bit over here because this is important. So we're going to go probably an extra 10 or 15 minutes, which I've been doing lately because I think it's worth it. I was going to do this in 2 podcasts, but I decided not to do it. Mm-hmm. So with a creative real estate entrepreneur, deals are solid. You're welcome, Righteous Media Group. He said, perfect, thanks. Okay. Here's what I did. I put in the description, excuse me. I put in the description a link to a 4-page report that I wrote a few years ago. Actually, I didn't write it. A friend of mine wrote it, and I enhanced it. That talks about all the things we were talking about today, and it puts it in words that you can actually give your seller and explain it to your seller, or you could actually use it on your calls to explain to sellers why we're different than realtors. So go grab that free report. Okay. And here's the thing. Normally I put an opt-in page in front of it. I didn't do any of that. I just put the raw link there. Just go get it. So I don't know why I didn't do that, but now let's talk about the big pink elephant that's in the room in today's economy.
And what's that?
And so if you want to go right now, we're at 58 minutes. We're an hour into the podcast. If you want to go, that's fine. But honestly, this is the best part of the podcast. So you should stick around. Okay. Mm-hmm. With appreciation, which means the price of the house keeps going up, and the pandemic causing a fake shortage of real estate, because there is not a shortage of real estate, like they say. You know, they got all these theories about how we didn't build enough houses in the 60s and all that kind of crap, right? Now, maybe that happens with, 15 million immigrants in our country now. That might happen, but it hasn't happened up until now. It seems the seller doesn't have to come off these issues. So all the things we just talked about were all the things that I've done for 30 years and all the conversations we've had with sellers for 30 years, right? And then the pandemic came and things changed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? So some of this stuff doesn't work nowadays. It does work with the right seller, but you're not going to find, it's like a needle in a haystack finding some of these people. I mean, they have a line of buyers looking outside their front door to overpay, right?
Yeah. Or if not, they think so.
Right. So let's cover, yeah, that's right. If not, they may think so. Let's cover how to handle this one word, which is options. So here's how we're going to deal with this person. So when we're talking to the seller about doing an option agreement, it's much like what the realtors do. So nowadays, when we talk to a seller, we tell them one of two things. They have a choice, and the script does this. If you've gotten the scripts, right? Mm-hmm. Here's what happens. We could do one of two things with every seller, and if you're not talking about these things with a seller, you're giving away probably 70 or 80% of your deals in today's market. You can tell the seller if they want full asking price. The only way we could do that is to make monthly payments for 36 months. And when we make monthly payments for 36 months, we will pay them up to 70% above market value. So a $300,000 house will sell for $394,000. The script and the calculator, which we've given away in past podcasts, does all that for you. If you don't have that script and podcast and want it, send a support ticket to flippinghousesforrookies.com or to creativereireplay.com, and I will make sure you get some links in a webinar to show you how to do that. Okay?
Yeah.
If the seller says, oh, no, I want all cash, I don't want to wait 3 years, then you tell them, okay, oh, by the way, let me back up. So seller says they want $300,000 and they're not willing to come off that price. They don't want to pay any fees. Yeah. Say, okay, I can do that. I need 36 months. I'm going to sell the house on a lease with an option, and you're going to mark the price of the house up 5%. That 5% is your profit. That 5% is the money you're going to collect for doing the transaction. Mm-hmm. And you're going to match make the buyer and the seller with a lease with an option agreement, and the lease is written so that they do not have landlord obligations. They become the bank.
Right.
If seller says, no, I don't want that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I can't imagine any seller saying that. Every seller says that, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
You say to them, okay, so here's what happens. If you want all cash, I'm willing to get you all cash within the next 90 days. Within the next 30 days, if I can, if you give me a 90-day option agreement with a 5% discount. Mm-hmm. So the $300,000, 5% of $300,000 is $15,000. So you're going to write an option agreement for $285,000. Mm-hmm. You're going to put it on the market for $290,000 and make $5,000, and you're going to get cash.
Yep.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Those are the two things that you need to do in today's economy. Now, are you going to run into other deals? Hell yeah. Are you going to find subject twos? Hell yeah. Right? By the way, what's the script, Peter, on doing a subject to deal?
Well, you can start with a terms deal, and the person may say,
No. What's the script for a subject to deal? It's one line.
The punchline. Well, are you willing to sell for what you owe?
So at any time of the conversation, if you feel like the seller is willing to walk away, all you have to say to them is, are you willing to sell the house for what you owe on it? That's a subject to script.
Yeah.
End of story. You don't need to go, well, what do you mean? Well, I can take over your mortgage payment and we could do this next week. How does that work? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to take the property deed out of your name, put it into a trust. I'm going to manage the trust, and the mortgage is going to stay in the trust name. I mean, the mortgage is going to stay in your name. The deed's going to be in the trust, and we're going to manage the property until we can get you cashed out.
Mm-hmm.
That's the script. It's not hard.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so these deals are going to fall in your lap. Seller finance deals, right? Rehab retail deals, they're going to fall in your lap. Probate deals, they're going to fall in your lap when you're doing these two types, when you're looking just for these two types of deals. Because here's the point. The reason why, and this is important, the reason why you do not have money from real estate is because you don't have buyers willing to pay you money. And the reason why you don't have buyers, because the buyers fund every deal.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have buyers, you don't have money.
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The way you get buyers is to have inventory. You have to have inventory for the buyers to look at to say, I'll give you this much or I'll give you that much. If you don't have that, you will never make money with real estate. So that means that your business is lopsided. You're spending too much time trying to figure out how to get the inventory with the sellers and never getting a house to show to a buyer. And that's what we do here. Creative REI Reply is a great software to do that, and we show you how to do that. And so Righteous, you need to send that deal to me in the support ticket, because if he's willing to do subject to and swap a deed and a mortgage and let it stay in his name, we can definitely do that deal. All right, so oh my goodness, sorry. So in this scenario, I'm going to give you a list of 10 things, which we're going to buzz right through because we're already at an hour and 6 minutes. Okay. I'm going to give you 10 things that you could tell the seller that makes us different than a realtor. So the ones that I gave you already are what I've used for 30 years. The ones I'm going to give you now are in today's economy.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Number one, our option agreement could be as little as 30 days, but often is 90 days.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
A realtor's MLS contract is going to be at least 6 months.
Right.
Okay. Number two, if the seller finds another buyer, they can just send us something in writing and we back out. They can't do that with a realtor.
No.
Right. Number three, we tell the seller how much the seller will net in the transaction up front. The realtor can't do that. Number four, we have a buyer's list, which this completely, absolutely just explodes my head.
Yeah.
We have a buyer's list. So every person that's going to contact us, especially in Creative REI Reply, we have this all automated. We get buyers in one house. You'll get between 75 and 150 people on your buyer's list. Mm-hmm. If you're in a good area, right? Mm-hmm. If you're in the rural area and you're like in Iowa and some farm country or something, you may not get that many. But in a normal city, you'll get that much, right?
Yeah.
So we have a buyer's list. So that means that we can text someone or SMS them, text someone on our list, and we can get buyers looking right away the next day once we sign an agreement with the seller.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So here's what happens in most cases. You delay putting your house, when you get it under contract, on the market. We'll say 3 days or 5 days. And you tell your list it's not on the market.
Mm-hmm.
This is inside skinny. Nobody knows this house is for sale except you. And if there's somebody else on the list, they know that. But the market knows. The neighbors don't even know this house is on the market. So you better go look right now.
There's no signs.
You better go look right now. Otherwise, you might lose a deal of a lifetime. I have no idea. This is why my head implodes. Why I have no idea why Realtors don't do this. They don't collect names, or they collect business cards at an open house. Whoop-de-doo. 8 business cards at an open house.
Woohoo!
But they didn't collect the 80 names that were on Zillow that looked at the house. I have no idea why they don't do that. Number five, we will share the 5% discount to get a faster deal. I'm telling you, if it's a $400,000 house, a 5% discount is $20,000.
Yeah.
We're only going to ask for $5,000 to do a transaction because that's normally what a realtor would get, an agent would get in this deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Does that mean that you can't go in and at 385 and all of a sudden you got a bidding war and next thing you know you got to bid for 395? Yeah, that happens.
Yeah.
The point is you're going to tell the seller I'm going to share my commission with the buyer.
With the buyer or the seller?
Yeah. No, with the buyer.
So
why do you look so confused?
Because I thought you were going to say if we get a lot more money than we thought, we would give some to the seller. So how do we do it with the buyer?
So if we got a 5% commission, a 5% discount on a $400,000 house,
yeah,
we're going to write an option for $380,000.
Yeah,
we're going to add $5,000 for our fee. That $15,000 we're going to share with the buyer.
The part that would have gone, he gets the benefit. The buyer does.
So the buyer, so we can attract the buyer quicker because we're bribing them to come to our deal by $15,000. Realtor's not going to do that.
Right.
Okay.
So quick question though, just because somebody said this to me once on the phone. What if a house goes for 400 or 420 and there's a bunch of money? The seller's going, what if you make a bunch of money? I get cut out. Could we give some of that to him over a certain amount?
It's creative real estate. You can do anything you want.
Yeah, boy. Okay.
I'm going to put a link in the chat this afternoon for the VAs on closing, and that's one of it's Alex Hormozy, and it's one of the things that he talks about. You should listen to that video.
Okay.
I'm going to put it in the WhatsApp chat today for the VAs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Number 6, with the NAR lawsuit, National Association of Realtors, sellers are given the choice to only pay the seller's real estate commission. That's when they settled for $418 million. They were sold and lost for $1.78 billion.
Yeah.
They settled for $418 million. Mm-hmm. And as of July of 2024, which ended up rolling into August, they changed all their paperwork and said that the seller is only obligated to pay his realtor or her realtor.
That'll be the 2.5%.
Whatever they decide.
Oh, yes.
They do not have to do it. They do not have to pay the co-broke fee, meaning they have to pay the buyer. So the seller has that choice, which means in that transaction, the buyer has to come to the table with their realtor's fee.
Yeah.
Right. So let's say it's 2.5%, like you said, or 3%. They're going to have to. So on a $300,000 house at 3%, that means that the seller's realtor gets 3%, which is $9,000.
Yeah.
And the buyer's realtor gets 3%, which is $9,000. Which to me is dangerous because now it makes it too easy to get more money. Like in this particular case, they got $18,000 instead of $15,000. Mm-hmm. But more importantly, that means that the buyer has to come up with their down payment. They need to come up with their closing cost, and now they need to come up with the realtor fees.
Yeah.
And if the bank lends on it, that's good, but the banks have not adjusted to do that yet. So where do they come up with that $9,000?
Mm-hmm. And those are the posts I'm seeing online. Like, what do you do if you're the buyer agent? How do you negotiate your fee? I'm seeing a lot of that because they're scrambling.
We have none of this crap.
Nope.
All the numbers are known up front. No secrets with us. Big time. Big advantage. You'll close deals just on that one point. Mm-hmm. Because just what you're saying. Because I forgot the numbers, but it was a big number. Something like 60% in July, 60% of all the deals in like San Diego or something, I forgot where it was, canceled because of that. Big to do. Why do you think you see all the ads on TV and all over the place for realtors these days?
Bill, I heard when realtors will pay the seller like $1,000 or $2,000 to get the deal. They'll pay them up front.
Yep.
Holy crap! Are you kidding me? Why don't you say you're starving and begging? Yikes.
Yep. Number 7, a realtor often requires repairs to cut down on the buyer's objections when trying to close buyers. So for a very long time, I preached it's because the reason why the sellers, the realtors do this is because they don't know how to negotiate because they haven't been taught how to negotiate.
Mhm.
I've since realized what I just told you a little bit earlier is it's really because the bank won't lend on the property. Okay?
Yeah.
A creative real estate entrepreneur knows how to handle a buyer or a property when it's not 100% up to date or up to par and needs some repairs, and will not require the seller to do repairs. Now, this is a whole podcast in itself, but the little secret here is we just add one sentence to our ads and it completely handles this.
Yeah.
It's actually 2 words.
Mm-hmm.
Handyman special.
Mm-hmm.
AKA, that's a license for us to sell somebody an ugly house. Okay? Number 8, which, by the way, the realtor could do that, but what's the difference? Who's going to pay for it? What lender will give that money?
Yeah.
With us, we're getting the money from the seller, and the seller's willing to, because they live there and it's their house, they're willing to lend on it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Number 8, an option agreement shifts partial ownership into a creative real estate entrepreneur, so he is invested in the transaction. So because he's a part owner of the deal, is he going to try to sell it? Of course. A realtor has no skin in the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
He often he doesn't treat it like it's his own deal.
Sure, it's like a consignment. Take it or leave it. Maybe, maybe not.
It's the difference between a used car salesman and the owner.
Yeah.
Of the dealership.
Yeah.
Used car salesman is just going to get his commission. The owner is going to get all the money.
Yeah.
Okay. Bad example, used car salesman, but it makes a point.
Yeah.
Right? Number 10. I'm sorry, it's number 9. I skipped one. Number 9, creative real estate entrepreneurs are often more creative with solutions to close than a realtor traditional system.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to tell you right now, this is probably the biggest thing that you can tell a seller, but they won't get it. But the people I'm talking to right now will get it immediately.
Mm-hmm.
How many hours have you personally studied creative real estate? Do you know?
500, 800.
Okay. Let's call that continuing education.
Yeah.
Do you think a realtor has spent 500 or 800 hours to learn their craft?
Oh, I doubt it. Nope.
That alone should be enough reason for any seller to pick you.
Well, a realtor is like a one-trick pony. They have one thing that they have to do. It's not complicated.
Right.
We have many possibilities. I won't say options. We have many possibilities, and then it's whatever we think will work between us and a seller and a buyer.
Exactly.
There's no limit to that, and there's no laws restricting that, as long as it's
Exactly.
not something crazy, which we don't do.
Right. So creative real estate entrepreneurs have way more continuing education than the average realtor. So, of course, when it comes to negotiating and doing the transaction, they're inherently going to know more. Even if you just listen to this podcast for an hour and 17 minutes, you've got more insight than a realtor did that went to realtor school and spent $2,000. Okay? Number 10, my last point, and then we're going to get out of here. Creative real estate entrepreneurs often have more certainty on closing. They vet buyers differently and pay more attention to the deals where the realtors just write a purchase and sales agreement and they pass it along to a closing agent, and a creative real estate entrepreneur doesn't do that. So, in my simple words, creative real estate entrepreneurs are way more proactive, and the realtors are more reactive.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, for example, I'm doing a refinance. The only time I hear from my agent, my mortgage agent, is when the bank sends a communication. Otherwise, I don't hear from her.
Yeah.
So, like, I got this word on Monday or Tuesday, that I got to fix this trim under the window, and I decided instead of just finding somebody and doing it right away, I'm going to send my buddy Jay. He can't get out there till Saturday. So for 5 days or 4 days, I haven't heard from her, or heard from the underwriter, haven't heard from anybody, because they're just waiting for me to get the window fixed. Now, if I was a mortgage agent, because it's not a big repair, it's like a piece of 1x3 that's 32 inches long. You got to be nailed to the house. That's it.
Jeez.
Okay. If I was a mortgage agent that was getting a commission, I wouldn't wait 4 days we're at the end of the loan. We get this and we got to clear to close. A clear to close means that the underwriter is ready to give us money and she gets her commission. Why would she let me sit for 4 days and not wondering what I'm doing? I'd be calling her I'd be calling me twice a day, like, what's going on? That's the mortgage agent. This is what realtors do. I wouldn't do that. I would be all over it, like, what's going on? Right?
Mm-hmm.
If I was a realtor with this deal, I would be saying, you can't get somebody out there? Okay, I'm going to send one of my guys out there, and whatever they charge me, we're taking it out of the deal. So if it's $150, I'm taking $150 out of the closing, but we're getting this puppy closed because we're making I'm going to make $20,000 in this deal.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And
Sure.
realtors do this to some degree, but not enough. Where a creative real estate entrepreneur would do a lot more of this. Okay?
Yep.
All right. Hour and 20 minutes. I went way over. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully it made a lot of sense to you. Hopefully you have some clarification in your head, and you'll make sure you like us. Make sure you subscribe to us wherever you're listening to us. Make sure you leave a comment. Make sure you go into the description and grab my document. That's the 4-page document on everything we talked about today that you can give your sellers. You'll have to change your name, obviously, on the end of the letter, but you can do that. And make sure you tune in next week. I think next week's podcast is called, give me a second here. It is called Breakthrough Rookie Secrets That Flip Sellers into Creative Finance Deals Skillfully. So that's next week's conversation, which is podcast number 430. And if you want to get help from me, you can go to flippinghousesforrookies.com or creativereireply.com and send in a support ticket. Both of them are on the top right-hand side. There's a link up there. Okay? So thank you for the support. Thank you for listening. And flourish and prosper. Go find a deal. Over and out.
This has been Flipping Houses for Rookies. The American Dream. What is it? It's called financial freedom. And with real estate, you'll have it. Without the banks, without the bigwigs, and without the realtors' nonsense. Bill and Pete are two real estate investors with 30 years plus of experience, hundreds of deals under their belts, and a mission to change the way you think about creative real estate. Do be sure to like, rate, and review the show. And after that, hit up our YouTube channel at Flipping Houses for Rookies /streams. We'll be back soon, and see you then on Flipping Houses for Rookies.